In these dark hours that Colombia is experiencing, statements from the country's most respected security expert, Óscar Naranjo, have shaken the entire nation. Documents that have emerged as a result of years of investigation have revealed the existence of a corruption network operating at the highest levels of the state. The information disclosed by Naranjo at today's press conference is of such magnitude that it will change the political map not only of Colombia but of all Latin America. Retired General Naranjo is a figure known for his experience gained during his 36-year police career and his success in combating organized crime groups from Pablo Escobar to the present day. The man standing before us today is not just a retired police officer but also a patriot who risks his life to protect his country's honor. What Naranjo has to say will bring to light truths that have been hidden for years. Documents and audio recordings leaked to the media in recent weeks revealed that some figures at the highest levels of government were connected to the cartel's financial network. Among these documents are bank transfer records, encrypted phone conversations, and most strikingly, photographs of secret meetings. Naranjo stated that he had examined all of these pieces of evidence and that remaining silent would now constitute treason against the homeland. "The moment I have been waiting for years has come," said Naranjo, his hands seemingly trembling as he placed the file on the table. In that file are documents showing how one of Colombia's highest-ranking bureaucrats supported cartel money laundering operations. This person followed cartel leaders' directives when making critical government decisions and used the country's resources for the benefit of organized crime groups. According to the documents disclosed by Naranjo, the former minister in question not only took bribes but also played an active role in preparing legal regulations that would facilitate cartel operations. Through these regulations, millions of dollars were diverted to illegal channels, and safe corridors were created for drug trafficking. "I am aware that I am putting my life at risk by sharing these documents with you," said Naranjo, continuing. "But the Colombian people have the right to know the truth. This country has been trying to be corrupted from within for years, and we cannot turn a blind eye to this." Although the identity of the former minister has not yet been revealed, the clues given by Naranjo indicate that this person served in a critical ministry between 2000. It has come to light through conducted investigations that cartel interests were behind some decisions made during this period. During his speech, Naranjo played an audio recording from his phone. This recording contains a phone conversation between the former minister and a cartel representative. In the conversation, they discuss in detail how certain projects could be hindered and which decisions would be favorable to cartel interests. The authenticity of the audio recording has been confirmed through technical analysis. "This audio recording is just one of the dozens of documents we have," said Naranjo, placing piles of files on the table. Each file contains details of collaborations made on different dates, banking records, real estate transactions, company partnerships, and most importantly, secret account information are included in these files. Another striking detail revealed by Naranjo is foreign accounts opened in the name of the former minister's family. These accounts contain money that is 100 times the minister's official salary, and the source of this money is being questioned. A significant portion of the money has been determined to come from cartel money laundering operations. The beginning of the investigations is based on a detail that Naranjo discovered while examining old files from the Pablo Escobar era. At that time, Naranjo, who was a young police officer, had discovered the first clues of the network that emerged today while investigating cartel leaders' connections within the state. Although years have passed, this network has continued its activities under different names. In the 1990s, while tracking Pablo Escobar, I understood that he was not just a drug dealer, but part of an organization that had infiltrated the system, said Naranjo, emphasizing that his experiences from that period formed the foundation of today's discoveries. It has been understood that the network, which was thought to have disbanded after Escobar's death, actually transformed into a more sophisticated structure and became more deeply rooted in state levels. This new structure, unlike the old cartel organization, preferred the method of manipulating the system from within, rather than resorting to violence. One of the most surprising discoveries during Naranjo's investigations was the close friendship between the former minister and one of Pablo Escobar's former lawyers. This lawyer was a figure who handled the cartel's legal affairs after Escobar's death and gained influence in political circles in subsequent years. The relationship between the two men was not limited to friendship but also transformed into business partnerships. Companies established within the framework of these business partnerships were used for laundering cartel money. Although the companies appeared to be doing legitimate business, their real purpose was to clean illegal funds. The former minister, during his tenure as minister, helped these companies win advantageous public tenders. Among the documents obtained by Naranjo are email exchanges showing how these tenders were manipulated. In the emails, it is clearly seen that tender conditions were arranged so that certain companies would win. It has also been determined that fake documents were prepared to eliminate competing companies. "The justice mechanism must function," said Naranjo, emphasizing that authorities need to take urgent action regarding this situation. The retired general stated that he would hand over all the documents in his possession to the prosecutor's office and would testify in court if necessary. One of the questions directed to Naranjo during the press conference was why he had not disclosed these documents earlier. In his response to this question, Naranjo mentioned the long-term work done to obtain all the documents, in addition to security concerns. "Acting with incomplete information could have caused criminals to escape," said Naranjo, emphasizing that they had conducted a meticulous investigation. Among Naranjo's greatest difficulties during the investigation process was the fearful silence of some key witnesses. These witnesses were concerned that their lives would be in danger if their cartel connections were revealed. Naranjo worked for months to convince these people and eventually managed to get some of them to agree to speak. According to what one of the witnesses told, the former minister regularly held secret meetings with cartel representatives. In these meetings, they would discuss which projects would be supported, which decisions would be made, and which people would be brought to critical positions. The meetings were usually held in luxury villas outside Bogota. It is understood from the documents that the former minister's collaboration was not only financial but also provided operational support. Law enforcement operations in certain regions were interfered with. Cartel leaders were warned in advance, and safe transit corridors were provided. In the documents disclosed by Naranjo, it is also seen that the former minister provided fake passports for cartel leaders to escape abroad. These passports were prepared using official channels, and the highest level of security measures were taken. Cartel leaders who went abroad with fake passports continued their activities there. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," said Naranjo, hinting that bigger revelations would come. He said he had more documents and would share them when the time came. Among these documents are evidence showing the existence of an international network involving politicians from other countries. The international dimension shows that the incident is not limited to Colombia alone. It has been determined that the cartel network has similar structures in many Latin American countries and collaborates with politicians in these countries. This discovery reveals the necessity of a regional cleanup operation. Another striking issue disclosed by Naranjo is that this corruption network is not limited to one person. The documents show that dozens of people from different institutions are part of this network. It has been determined that people working in a wide range from the Ministry of Justice to the Ministry of Interior, from Customs Administration to Tax Office, act in line with cartel interests. The coordination of this extensive network was ensured through regular meetings. People attending the meetings would implement the directives they receive from cartel leaders in their own institutions. The most dangerous aspect of this system is that the state's decision-making mechanisms have been completely captured. Financial records obtained by Naranjo show that this network's annual turnover reaches billions of dollars. In addition to money laundering, this money obtained through methods such as tax evasion, customs smuggling, and illegal gains from state tenders was reintegrated into the system. The most interesting aspect of the network's financial structure is its effort to legitimize its activities by establishing legal-looking companies. These companies operated in sectors such as construction, tourism, agriculture, and mining. Although the owners of the companies appeared to be business people with clean backgrounds, it was understood that the real control was in the hands of cartel leaders. One of the issues Naranjo struggled with most during his investigations was determining the real assets of these companies. Thanks to multi-layered ownership structures and offshore accounts, tracking the real source of money became quite difficult. However, thanks to Naranjo's international connections, this complex structure began to be unraveled. Among the countries where offshore accounts are located are Panama, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. Banks in these countries implemented special procedures to hide their customers' identities. However, as a result of international pressure, some banks began to cooperate. Naranjo's statements today seem to be going down in history as one of the most important turning points in Colombia's cartel war. At the most critical moment of the struggle that has been going on for years, the identities of the enemies within the state are being revealed. Regarding the demand for the arrest of the former minister, Naranjo stated that all legal procedures would be followed, but that justice would not be allowed to be delayed. "We are committed to the principles of the rule of law, but this does not mean protecting criminals," he said. Following Naranjo's statements, the former minister's lawyers held an emergency press conference. The lawyers defended their client's innocence, claiming that the allegations were unfounded. However, faced with the strength of the documents presented by Naranjo, they had to reconsider their defense strategies. Legal circles indicate that the documents presented by Naranjo have a high probability of being accepted as evidence in court. Particularly the fact that the authenticity of audio recordings and banking documents has been confirmed through technical analysis is among the factors that will determine the course of the case. In the final part of the press conference, Naranjo emphasized how important the support from the public was for him. "I am not conducting this struggle alone. Every citizen's support is critically important for the truth to come out," he said. After Naranjo's statements, a great movement began on social media. While the Colombian people applauded the retired general's courage and determination, they launched campaigns for justice to prevail. While hashtags became trending, people took to the streets and organized support demonstrations. The international community is also closely following Naranjo's statements. The United States, the European Union, and neighboring countries announced that they viewed the situation with concern and would provide necessary support for justice to be served. These developments open a new page in Colombia's fight against organized crime. This operation that began under Naranjo's leadership is critically important for the country's cleanup. With the support of the people and the international community, the days when justice will prevail are approaching. Retired General Óscar Naranjo has once again proven that he is in service to his country. These statements show that he is not just a retired police officer, but also a leader determined to protect democratic values. The Colombian people are witnessing the struggle of a true hero. It is expected that Naranjo will share more documents in the coming days. These documents may contain revelations that will affect the fate of not only Colombia but the entire region. The world is curiously waiting for Naranjo's next move. In the afternoon hours, new documents that reached Naranjo showed that the situation was even more dire. Among these documents are photographs showing that the former minister held secret meetings with Pablo Escobar's son. In these meetings, they discussed how the drug network left as the father's legacy could be reactivated. It was known that Escobar's son had lived in silence for many years after his father's murder. However, it was mentioned in intelligence reports that he returned to the scene in the 2010s and tried to rebuild his father's old network. According to the documents obtained by Naranjo, the former minister played a critical role in this restructuring process. When I saw these photographs, I was surprised but also not surprised, said Naranjo, once again emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. In the photographs, the former minister and Escobar's son are clearly seen eating together at a luxury restaurant and having an intimate conversation. It has been determined that following these meetings, critical decisions in the former minister's ministry changed. Particularly, sudden cuts were made to the budgets of drug enforcement units and some operations were canceled without justification. It is now clearly seen that the agreements made with the Escobar family were behind these decisions. Another striking detail revealed by Naranjo is that the former minister composed his own security team from Escobar's former men. These people were among Pablo Escobar's personal guards when he was alive, and were privy to the cartel's most secret operations. Questions arise about how these men reached the former minister, and why they were given duties. It has been determined that these people in the security team relayed all of the former minister's communications to cartel leaders. Even audio recordings of some secret state meetings fell into the hands of cartel leaders. Thanks to these recordings, cartels could learn the state's plans in advance and act accordingly. One of the most surprising elements that Naranjo discovered during his investigations was that the former minister was keeping some of Pablo Escobar's personal belongings in his own office. Among these items are Escobar's gold watch, signed photographs, and even his personal weapon. While this situation was thought to have a psychological dimension, it was understood that it was actually an indicator of loyalty to the cartel. The former minister would proudly show these items to visitors in his office and would not hide his admiration for Pablo Escobar. He would even give speeches in some meetings about what a smart businessman Escobar was. Audio recordings of these speeches are also in Naranjo's possession. In the financial documents disclosed by Naranjo, it is also seen that the former minister not only took bribes but also directly invested in cartel operations. The former minister's money was found in projects such as establishing drug laboratories, expanding the transportation network, and expanding into foreign markets. The profits he obtained from these investments made the former minister a millionaire. In addition to Colombia, he purchased real estate in Miami, New York, and London. Some of these properties were used as safe houses for cartel operations. One of the most interesting properties is a historic building in the center of Bogota. While this building appeared to operate as a cultural center, it was actually used as a center where cartel leaders held secret meetings. In the basement of the building, there are encrypted communication systems and secret passages. According to the information provided by Naranjo, critical decisions regarding Colombia's future were made in meetings held in this building. Which politicians would be supported, which projects would be hindered, and even which journalists would be silenced were determined in these meetings. The list of silenced journalists is one of the issues that saddened Naranjo the most. This list contains the names of dozens of journalists who investigated drug trafficking and corruption within the state. Some of these journalists were mysteriously killed, while others were forced to leave the country as a result of threats. These attacks on press freedom are an attack on the foundations of democracy, said Naranjo, emphasizing that urgent measures need to be taken to protect journalists. He called for the files of killed journalists to be reopened and the real perpetrators to be found. Among the documents disclosed by Naranjo are evidence showing that some judges were also part of this network. These judges made favorable decisions in cartel cases and issued acquittal decisions at critical times. In return, they received significant amounts of money, and their families were provided with luxury living opportunities abroad. The capture of the judiciary in this way shows how shaken Colombia's justice system has become. Naranjo stated that a radical judicial reform is essential to correct this situation. There is no peace without justice, said Naranjo, emphasizing that all institutions need to be cleaned. Internationally, the documents disclosed by Naranjo show that some banks in the US and Europe were also involved in these money laundering operations. These banks accepted suspicious money transfers without question, and even established special systems to facilitate these transfers. The United States Treasury Department announced that it had launched an investigation into these banks in light of the information disclosed by Naranjo. The European Union also announced that it would take similar steps and implement stricter measures in the fight against money laundering. Naranjo's statements have led to a review of strategies for combating organized crime groups not only in Colombia but around the world. Awareness has increased about how deep infiltrations within the state can be. Following these developments, security measures for Naranjo were also increased. The Colombian government established a special team to ensure the retired general's security. At the same time, the right to request international protection was also granted. "I love my homeland more than my life," said Naranjo, stating that he would not step back in the face of threats. He said he would share all the documents in his possession with world public opinion, and would continue this struggle to the end. While the Colombian people applauded Naranjo's courage, they began to voluntarily form protection groups for his security. Campaigns launched on social media gained the support of millions of people. The people showed that they stood behind a true hero. Among the documents that Naranjo will disclose in the coming days are details of collaborations involving politicians from neighboring countries. These revelations could cause a major political crisis throughout Latin America. However, Naranjo shows that he is ready to pay any price for the truth to come out. As the evening progressed, Naranjo received additional disturbing intelligence that further illuminated the scope of this criminal enterprise. Documents revealed that the former minister had established what essentially amounted to a parallel government structure, with cartel operatives embedded in virtually every major government institution. This shadow administration operated with remarkable efficiency, often making decisions faster than the legitimate government itself. The financial implications of this revelation are staggering. Economic analysts who have reviewed Naranjo's documents estimate that this network diverted approximately $15 billion from Colombia's national treasury over a 7-year period. This massive theft contributed significantly to the country's economic struggles during that timeframe, including reduced funding for education, healthcare, and infrastructure projects that could have transformed millions of lives. Perhaps most shocking of all was the discovery of a sophisticated voter manipulation scheme orchestrated by the former minister. Using a combination of bribery, intimidation, and technological manipulation, this network had been influencing election outcomes at both local and national levels for over a decade. Voting machines in key districts had been compromised, voter registration databases had been manipulated, and in some cases entire ballot boxes had been replaced with pre-filled alternatives. Naranjo's investigation uncovered evidence that several prominent political figures currently holding office may have gained their positions through these fraudulent means. This revelation threatens to invalidate numerous elections and could potentially trigger a constitutional crisis of unprecedented proportions. The former minister had maintained detailed records of these operations, apparently as insurance against potential betrayal by his cartel partners. The international ramifications continue to expand as Naranjo revealed connections between this Colombian network and similar operations in Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil. Intelligence intercepts show that these country-specific networks frequently coordinated their activities, sharing resources, personnel, and strategic intelligence. What initially appeared to be a Colombian problem has now revealed itself as a continental conspiracy of breathtaking scope. European authorities have confirmed that several major European banks unknowingly processed hundreds of millions of dollars in cartel money through accounts controlled by the former minister's network. These transactions were disguised as legitimate international trade payments, art purchases, and charitable donations. The sophistication of these money laundering operations rivals anything previously seen in international law enforcement. Naranjo also disclosed evidence of the network's attempts to influence international media coverage of Colombia's drug war. Prominent journalists and news organizations in the United States and Europe had been covertly funded to produce favorable coverage of certain Colombian political figures while downplaying the extent of cartel influence in government. This propaganda operation helped maintain international legitimacy for compromised officials while they systematically dismantled anti-drug efforts from within. The technological aspects of this conspiracy are equally alarming. The former minister's network had invested heavily in cutting-edge surveillance technology, creating a domestic spying apparatus that monitored opposition politicians, journalists, and civil rights activists. This surveillance network intercepted communications, tracked movements, and compiled detailed dossiers on anyone perceived as a threat to their operations. Educational institutions were not spared from this corruption. Universities across Colombia received significant funding from front organizations controlled by the network, with the implicit understanding that certain research projects would be discouraged or suppressed. Academic studies examining the true scope of cartel influence in Colombian society were systematically undermined, ensuring that the academic community remained largely unaware of the network's extensive reach. Religious organizations also fell victim to this systematic corruption. Several prominent churches and religious leaders received substantial donations from cartel-linked sources, creating a moral authority structure that provided legitimacy and community support for compromised political figures. Some religious leaders actively preached in favor of policies that benefited cartel operations, using their spiritual authority to influence their congregations' political choices. The healthcare system became another vector for corruption as the network established a series of private medical facilities that served dual purposes. While providing legitimate medical care to the general population, these facilities also served as safe houses for cartel operatives, money laundering centers, and secret meeting locations for high-level negotiations. Medical records were falsified to provide alibis for cartel leaders, and ambulances were used to transport drugs and weapons without detection. Naranjo's evidence reveals that the network had contingency plans for virtually every scenario, including detailed evacuation procedures for key personnel in the event of exposure. Safe houses had been established in multiple countries, false identities had been prepared, and significant financial resources had been moved to secure offshore locations. The former minister personally maintained escape routes to at least 6 different countries, complete with new identities and pre-positioned assets. The psychological profiles compiled by the network's intelligence operatives demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of human motivation and manipulation. They identified potential recruits based on psychological vulnerabilities, financial pressures, family situations, and personal ambitions. This systematic approach to corruption ensured high success rates in compromising targets across all levels of government and society. As night fell, Naranjo reflected on the enormous personal cost of his investigation. He had sacrificed relationships, endangered his family, and lived in constant fear for years to compile this evidence. Several of his closest associates had withdrawn their support once they understood the implications of his discoveries. Yet he remained convinced that exposing this network was essential for Colombia's survival as a democratic nation. The retired general's final words of the day carried both warning and hope. "We stand at a crossroads in our nation's history. We can choose to confront this cancer within our institutions, or we can allow it to continue metastasizing until it destroys everything we hold dear. The choice is ours, but time is running out. The forces of darkness have had decades to entrench themselves, but the light of truth can still prevail if we have the courage to face it." Tomorrow's revelations promise to be even more explosive, as Naranjo has indicated he will release evidence of direct foreign government involvement in supporting this network. The implications for international relations and regional stability could be profound, potentially reshaping the geopolitical landscape of Latin America for generations to come. The evening brought even more shocking developments, as Naranjo received additional classified documents from an anonymous source within the intelligence community. These documents revealed that the corruption network had tentacles reaching into the highest levels of the military establishment. Several high-ranking military officials had been compromised, providing cartels with advance warning of anti-drug operations and even supplying them with military-grade weapons. According to these newly obtained files, the former minister had orchestrated a systematic infiltration of Colombia's armed forces. Young officers were identified and recruited during their training at military academies, creating a generation of compromised military personnel who would later rise to positions of significant influence. This long-term strategy ensured that cartels would have protection and inside information for decades to come. The most disturbing revelation came in the form of intercepted communications, showing that some military units had been directly involved in protecting drug shipments during transport. Helicopters and armored vehicles bearing official military markings were used to escort cocaine shipments from production facilities in remote jungle areas to distribution points near major cities. These operations were conducted under the direct authorization of the former minister, who had issued falsified military orders to legitimize the escorts.